Welcome to Japanese Sleep Whispers, your sanctuary for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. Tonight's story is accompanied by the soothing melody Kaiman, a piece created to bring calmness and deep relaxation. Here, you will find calming bedtime stories inspired by the timeless beauty and traditions of Japan. Whether you seek peace after a long day, relief from stress, or help drifting into sleep, these stories will guide you toward tranquility. Imagine moonlit gardens, ancient temples, and whispering bamboo forests as the music of Kaiman carries you deeper into stillness. If you'd like these soothing moments to be part of your nightly ritual, consider subscribing so they're always here when you need them. Thank you for listening. May Kaiman and these gentle whispers bring you peace, tonight and always. The Hidden Stream in Autumn Mist. Prologue: The Whispering Autumn Mist. The early morning mist had settled gently over Kyoto, softening the lines of the rooftops and the distant hills. It drifted between the maple trees in the temple garden, curling around the stone lanterns like a delicate silk scarf. Every branch, every leaf seemed wrapped in a quiet secret, a story told only to those who could listen. Ryosen, the monk who had lived in the temple for many years, stood by the wooden veranda, breathing slowly. His robe brushed lightly against his legs as he watched the fog move through the courtyard, the sound of the wind like a whispered prayer. The small stream that ran at the edge of the garden was hidden under the mist, its presence felt more than seen. He could hear it faintly, the water murmuring over stones polished smooth by years of gentle passage. The stream carried a chill from the mountains, but it was soft, comforting, like a lullaby murmured beneath a mother's breath. In the distance, a bell tolled from a neighboring temple. It was not loud, not demanding attention, merely a single note that lingered, folded into the mist, teaching patience without force. Ryosen closed his eyes and inhaled. The air was rich with the scent of damp earth, fallen leaves, and a faint trace of incense from the morning offering. He remembered a lesson from his teacher long ago: listen carefully, Ryosen. The smallest sound often carries the most wisdom. The mist shifted, revealing only hints of the stones along the path. Each step he might take would be guided not by sight, but by the gentle hum of life surrounding him: the stream, the wind, the hidden stir of creatures beneath the fallen leaves. He opened his eyes and smiled faintly. Today, as on every day, the temple, the garden, and the stream were present. They did not hurry. They did not ask for attention. They only existed, and in their existence, they offered a quiet kind of grace. Chapter 1: The Hidden Stream. After breakfast, Ryosen decided to walk along the path that followed the hidden stream beyond the garden gate. The mist had lifted slightly, revealing glimpses of amber and crimson leaves along the mossy banks. Sunlight filtered through the trees in soft beams, catching droplets of water like tiny stars suspended in the air. He walked slowly, letting each step align with the subtle rhythm of the stream. The water gurgled over the stones, carrying the memory of rain from the mountains above. It spoke not with words, but with a sound that touched the heart in a way words never could. As he passed under a canopy of maple leaves, he noticed how the wind moved through them, making a delicate rustle that blended perfectly with the stream's song. The sound reminded him of a flute played by a friend long ago, the notes lingering in the mind like gentle fog. Ryosen paused on a small wooden bridge that arched over the stream. He leaned lightly on the railing, watching the water swirl beneath him. In the reflection, he saw not only the maples and the sky, but a quiet echo of himself, an image folded into the tranquility around him. The temple bell tolled once from a distance, its resonance mingling with the sound of the stream. It reminded him of the impermanence of all things. Leaves fall, water flows, mist rises, and fades. Yet, within this flow, there was a steadfastness, a stillness that never left, waiting to be noticed. A small heron appeared on the opposite bank, its white feathers contrasting with the amber water and the dark stones. It did not move quickly, only tilting its head as if to acknowledge his presence, then resumed its quiet observation of the stream. Ryosen smiled softly. Even the animals here seemed to understand the language of silence. He continued along the path, stepping lightly over stones damp with dew, allowing the mist to curl around his shoulders. Each step was a meditation, a moment of awareness in the unbroken flow of morning. After some time, he reached a small clearing where the stream widened slightly, forming a shallow pool. The water was clear enough to see the smooth stones beneath, each one catching the light in subtle shades of amber and gray. Ryosen knelt beside it, tracing the rim of the pool with his hand. The water rippled gently, carrying with it the reflection of the maple trees above, the pale morning sun, and the lingering mist that still hovered over the banks. He breathed in deeply, letting the air, the water, and the soft sounds of the hidden stream fill him. In this place, he realized again the lesson he had learned long ago. Even the smallest stream can carry a vastness within it. Stillness is never empty. Ryosen remained there for some time, watching, listening, simply being. The stream whispered its quiet story, the wind hummed through the trees, and the mist curled around him like a gentle embrace. He felt the present moment settle fully into his body, mind, and spirit, a soft, unbroken calm that could last until the evening and beyond. When he finally rose, he took one last look at the hidden stream. He turned slowly and began walking back toward the temple, carrying the peace of the autumn mist with him, step by quiet step. Chapter 2: The Maple Shadows. The morning was soft, filtered through a lattice of red and gold maple leaves. Ryosen walked slowly along the stone path that wound through the temple garden, feeling the crunch of fallen leaves beneath his sandals. The air carried a faint chill, and with it, the aroma of damp earth and moss, a scent that seemed to anchor the mind in the present moment. The sunlight fell in slanted beams, catching each leaf like a tiny flame suspended in the air. Shadows stretched long across the ground, stretching and bending with the gentle sway of branches. Each shadow was unique, fleeting, yet intimately connected to the light that made it. Ryosen paused near the central pond, where the water mirrored the shifting canopy above. The surface shimmered as a breeze passed, rippling the reflection of red and amber leaves. For a moment, the world seemed doubled, one of solid stone and leaf, another of liquid light and shadow. He knelt beside the pond, trailing his fingers just above the water. A single leaf floated past, drifting slowly in a current invisible to the eye. He watched it go, knowing that each moment passed in its own quiet perfection, never to be repeated, never to be held. The temple bell tolled in the distance. Its sound mingled with the subtle rustle of the leaves and the distant murmur of the city beyond the walls. Ryosen inhaled deeply, letting the harmony of sound and shadow settle in his chest. A small bird landed on a nearby branch, its wings brushing against the maple leaves. It paused, then tilted its head, as if curious about the monk kneeling silently beside the pond. Ryosen smiled faintly, returning the bird's gaze. Even in the midst of life's quiet rhythms, recognition existed, a mutual acknowledgement between living beings, however brief. He rose slowly and walked further along the path, letting the shadows of the maples guide him. Each step was intentional, measured, and mindful. The garden seemed to breathe with him, inhaling and exhaling with the wind, the rustle of leaves, and the soft echo of his footsteps. At the far edge of the garden, he stopped to light a small lantern. The flame flickered and danced, casting tiny, shifting shadows across the moss-covered stones. The interplay of light and shadow reminded him, even in apparent stillness, life is moving, reflecting, and returning, always quietly teaching patience and attention. Ryosen closed his eyes and whispered a short verse. Maple shadows on stone, each step dissolves and returns the light remembers. He opened his eyes and continued walking, carrying the warmth of shadow and light with him as he moved deeper into the serene garden. Chapter 3 Reflections in the Water. By mid-morning, the hidden stream had grown brighter under the gentle autumn sun. Ryosen followed its course again, his robe brushing softly against the mossy stones along the bank. The water's surface glimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the maples above in deep reds, golds, and the faintest hints of green. He knelt at the edge, watching a cluster of leaves drift in circles, turning slowly, caught in the stream's gentle current. The water carried them onward without hurry, merging them with the small ripples and the faint reflection of clouds above. Ryosen's mind drifted with the water, following the subtle motions of the stream. He remembered sitting here as a young novice, learning to observe without judgment, learning to let the world move past him without clinging. The reflection in the water had always been a teacher, showing the impermanence of everything and the stillness that underlies constant change. From somewhere in the trees came the soft call of a bird. It echoed across the water, mingling with the stream's gurgle, producing a melody that required no audience, no applause, simply existing. He dipped his hand into the water, feeling the cool touch against his skin. The small currents circled his fingers, reminding him that every presence is fleeting, yet every touch leaves a trace. Even the smallest ripple in the stream could carry a memory, an echo, a quiet lesson. Ryosen stood and walked along the bank, noticing how the sunlight sparkled on wet stones. How the mist from the early morning still clung to shaded corners, and how the trees leaned gently over the water, their branches painting subtle patterns of shadow on the rippling surface. He paused on the little wooden bridge, letting the water pass beneath him in its eternal flow. The reflection of the sky above, the maples around, and his own form mingled together in a single, shimmering vision. It was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began, a perfect unity of observation and being. Ryosen inhaled deeply. The moment was complete in itself, requiring nothing more than awareness. He whispered to the stream, "Flow without concern, reflect without grasping, the water knows all." He remained on the bridge for some time, listening to the gentle currents. The wind rustling through the maples, and the faint hum of distant life beyond the garden walls. Eventually, he rose and continued along the path, leaving the stream and its reflections behind. Yet the memory of its quiet, endless motion accompanied him, settling into his mind like the slow turning of a wheel, steady, gentle, unbroken. The hidden stream had shared its lessons once again: patience, presence, and the profound serenity of simply being. Chapter 4: Lanterns in the Fog. As evening approached, the mist returned to the valley, rising from the river like breath exhaled by the earth itself. It drifted through the temple gates, curling between the cedar pillars, settling upon the moss-covered stones. The air was cool and faintly sweet, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. Ryosen lit the lanterns along the path one by one. Each small flame shimmered through the fog, forming a gentle constellation that glowed within the deepening twilight. The light was not sharp, but soft and golden, floating through the air as if weightless. The mist gathered around each lantern, turning the garden into a dreamscape of light and shadow, reality and reflection. He moved slowly, his footsteps muffled by fallen leaves. In the quiet, he could hear the delicate hiss of each wick as it caught fire, the faint crackle as oil met flame. It was a rhythm: light, pause, silence, breath. When he reached the last lantern near the pond, he stopped and looked around. The world was dim and infinite. The reflections of the lanterns wavered on the water's surface like tiny moons, trembling with each breath of wind. A frog croaked softly nearby, then another answered from the far side of the pond. The sound carried through the fog like ripples of time, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Even the faint echoes of the city beyond the temple seemed distant now, as if wrapped in layers of cotton and light. Ryosen sat on the veranda overlooking the pond. The warmth of the lanterns flickered on his face, their reflections merging with the stars that were beginning to pierce the thinning mist. He took a slow sip of tea from a clay cup, its surface still warm from the kettle, and let the steam mix with the air, vanishing into the haze. In this moment, he thought of impermanence, not with sorrow, but with tenderness. The fog, the lanterns, the ripples on the pond, all of them existed only now, and that was enough. He murmured, "No flame lasts the night, yet its warmth remains unseen, carried by the mist." The wind rose gently, moving the fog across the path like flowing silk. Lantern light shimmered through it, forming faint halos in the air, gold fading into silver, silver dissolving into shadow. Ryosen closed his eyes, listening to the rhythm of the night, the hush of water, the sigh of trees, the silent dance of flame. He could feel the world exhaling, preparing for rest. And within that stillness, he too began to fade, not into sleep, but into a deeper calm that rested beneath thought itself. Chapter 5: The Bridge Beyond the Bamboo. The next morning dawned pale and quiet. Mist lingered in the hollows, curling low around the roots of the bamboo grove behind the temple. Ryosen followed the narrow path that wound through the tall stalks, their green trunks glistening with dew. Each time the wind passed, the bamboo swayed, and the leaves brushed against one another with a sound like distant rain. The path led to an old wooden bridge, rarely visited except by birds and wandering travelers. It crossed a narrow ravine where the hidden stream flowed, its voice soft and constant, carrying echoes from the mountain above. Ryosen had walked here countless times, yet each morning felt different. The mist changed the shape of things, hiding one curve of the bridge, revealing another. Even the familiar became mysterious when wrapped in fog. He stopped halfway across the bridge and leaned against the railing. The bamboo forest on either side seemed endless, stretching into the mist like the memory of a dream. Sunlight filtered through in narrow beams, catching the drifting water vapor and turning it into a living tapestry of light. Ryosen listened. The sounds were layered: the creak of bamboo trunks, the sigh of the wind, the gurgle of the stream below, the faint ringing of wind chimes from the temple far behind. Each sound entered and left the silence without disturbing it, like footsteps across an ancient floor. He thought of a saying his teacher once shared: the bridge is not between two sides, it is the moment you are crossing. Looking down at the stream, he saw his reflection ripple and blur. It was not the reflection of a man, but of motion itself, the joining of form and flow. For a long while, he watched the image shift, dissolve, and return, each time slightly different, each time complete. At the far end of the bridge stood a small stone statue of Jizo, worn smooth by years of mist and wind. Someone, perhaps a visitor, a pilgrim, had left a red maple leaf at its base. The color was vivid against the gray stone, as if holding the memory of autumn within its veins. Ryosen bowed deeply before the statue. The air was cool on his forehead as he lowered it toward the ground, his breath mingling with the faint mist around him. He spoke softly, though no one else was there to hear: thank you for guarding the path between the seen and the unseen. As he stood once more, a shaft of sunlight pierced through the canopy, striking the bridge in a single golden beam. Dust and mist particles shimmered within it, floating like tiny spirits before disappearing into the morning air. Ryosen smiled. In that light, he felt the quiet assurance that nothing in nature truly ended, it only changed form, flowing as freely as the stream beneath his feet. He whispered a final verse before turning back toward the temple. Bridge within the mist, each step a vanishing world, still, I am carried. As he walked away, The sound of the bamboo swaying and the stream murmuring followed him like a lullaby. The fog slowly thinned, and the temple roofs came into view once more. He felt neither arrival nor departure, only continuity, the unbroken rhythm of presence. Chapter 6: The Silent Visitor. The evening sky was painted in fading hues of amber and violet. A thin mist gathered once more, creeping down from the mountains and folding gently over the temple grounds. The lanterns had not yet been lit, and the dim light made the world feel suspended half between day and night, sound and silence. Ryosen sat on the veranda, watching as the shadows deepened. He had finished his evening meditation, yet his heart remained alert, tuned to the subtle sounds of dusk. The hidden stream murmured in the distance, and from the forest beyond came the faint cry of a night bird greeting the oncoming dark. Then, through the fog, he saw a figure approaching the gate. It was a woman in a pale gray coat, her steps slow, deliberate. Her presence seemed at once fragile and sure, as if the mist itself were carrying her forward. When she reached the temple gate, she stopped, bowing slightly before stepping onto the stone path. Ryosen stood, his robe brushing softly against the wooden floor. "Good evening," he said, his voice low, calm. The woman smiled faintly. "I hope I'm not intruding. I used to come here a long time ago." Her voice was quiet, almost like a memory. Something in it stirred recognition in him, though he could not place her face. He gestured toward the veranda. "You're welcome here. Please, come sit." She approached slowly, the mist parting around her as though in respect. They sat together in silence for a while. The night deepened, and Ryosen lit one lantern, its flame trembling gently in the cool air. "You must find this place very peaceful," she said, her eyes reflecting the small golden light. "It is peaceful because everything here changes," he replied. "The water flows, the mist rises and falls. Even the stones grow softer with time. Nothing stays, and so nothing is lost." She looked toward the pond. "When I was young," she said, "my father used to bring me here. He told me that the sound of the stream could erase sadness. I didn't believe him then. But now." Her voice trailed off. Ryosen nodded. "Sometimes, the heart needs silence more than answers." The woman smiled, a quiet expression of relief passing over her face. They sat together until the lantern's light grew dim, the flame shrinking toward its end. Finally, she stood. "I should go," she said softly. "Thank you for remembering this place." Before he could respond, she bowed deeply and walked back into the mist. Her figure faded slowly, like ink dissolving in water. When the fog cleared, she was gone. Ryosen remained still, his gaze on the empty path. There was no sadness in her leaving, only the gentle recognition that even brief presences leave warmth behind. He whispered into the quiet air. In each farewell, a seed of silence blooms, not loss, but stillness. The mist thickened once more, wrapping the temple in its soft embrace. And within that quiet shroud, Ryosen felt only peace. Chapter 7 The Garden at Dawn. Before sunrise, the temple was still. A faint blue light touched the horizon, soft and trembling. The world was holding its breath, suspended in the space between night and morning. Ryosen stepped outside, the wooden floor cool beneath his feet. The air was crisp, scented with pine and the faint sweetness of the last autumn leaves. A thin veil of mist still hovered over the garden, drifting lazily between the stone lanterns and the low shrubs. He walked toward the pond, where the hidden stream flowed quietly beneath a blanket of early light. The water mirrored the sky, pale blue tinged with the first blush of gold. Tiny ripples moved across its surface as if the world itself were awakening. On the far edge of the garden, a small heron stood motionless, its reflection perfectly still. For a moment, the bird seemed part of the water, indistinguishable from its image. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, it lifted its wings and rose into the mist. The sound of its flight was soft, a single breath cutting through silence. Ryosen watched until the heron disappeared beyond the maple trees. He felt a quiet joy, as if the air had opened to reveal something hidden. The mist glowed faintly in the new light, revealing droplets clinging to spider webs, to moss, to the smooth stones of the path. Every detail shimmered with life. He began sweeping the fallen leaves from the stone walkway, each motion slow, unhurried. The sound of the broom against stone blended with the distant murmur of the stream. It was a familiar ritual, yet each morning it felt new, as though the world were constantly being rewritten by the touch of light. He paused, leaning on the broom handle, watching the steam rise from his breath. In that stillness, he remembered his teacher's final words: when the world awakens, do not rush to meet it. Let it come to you, one breath at a time. And so he stood, breathing slowly as the first sunlight touched the tops of the trees. The garden shimmered gold. Every leaf, every ripple, every sound became part of a single, continuous hymn, the quiet song of morning. He whispered his own words to the dawn. Dew on the stone path, morning light upon my hands, I am the silence. As the temple bell began to ring, its tone soft and deep, Ryosen bowed toward the garden. The mist lifted, revealing the hidden stream once more, shining beneath the clear light of day. It flowed as it always had, as it always would, gentle, eternal, unseen yet ever present. Epilogue: Morning mist and the first step. By the time the city awoke, the mist had almost vanished. Kyoto stretched out below the temple, rooftops glowing softly under the new sun. The world was stirring voices, footsteps, the distant sound of bicycles on stone streets. Yet up here, among the pines and maples, time moved differently. Ryosen stood at the temple gate, gazing down the path where the hidden stream began its quiet journey. He could still feel the cool breath of morning on his skin, the fading echo of the bell in the air. Each sound, each silence felt balanced, perfectly placed. He thought of the woman who had visited in the mist, of the heron's flight, of the lanterns glowing through the fog. Each memory was a ripple, soft, fleeting, and beautiful. He realized that they were not separate moments at all, but part of one endless stream, flowing through him, around him, beyond him. A gentle wind stirred the trees. The remaining mist caught the light and shimmered, like a veil lifting. In that brightness, everything seemed new. Ryosen smiled. He placed his broom beside the gate, bowed deeply toward the city below, and began walking down the path, the same stone path where the story had begun. Each step was quiet, but firm. The sound of the hidden stream followed him, steady and sure, like the heartbeat of the earth. As the sun rose higher, he whispered one final verse. Morning within me, stream beneath the silent world, each step, awakening. And with that, he disappeared down the winding path, the golden light of Kyoto unfolding before him, the mist slowly rising into the sky, a final breath of peace. Lanterns drifting on the quiet river. Prologue: the river at dusk. The river moved slowly beneath the fading light of evening. It was not the sound of rushing water, but of breathing, steady, patient, and endless. Between the willow trees that lined its banks, the first lanterns began to drift. Each one carried a small flame, trembling like a heart remembering something long past. Ryoen stood on the old stone embankment, the sleeves of his robe brushing against the cool air. The scent of the river was gentle, a mix of water, pine, and distant incense from the temple behind him. Above, the sky was the color of pale ash, deepening toward indigo as the last of the sunlight slipped away. He watched the lanterns float in silence. Their lights shimmered in soft clusters, drifting toward the center of the current. Then separating again like lives crossing paths for a brief moment before continuing their own quiet journeys. A soft wind stirred. The ripples widened, and the reflections trembled, as though the stars themselves had entered the water. Rioan closed his eyes for a moment, listening. The world was hushed, only the murmur of the river, the breath of the wind, the faint rustle of reeds. Even the city beyond seemed to fade into stillness. It was the night of Toro Nagashi, the lantern floating ceremony. Each light carried the name of someone departed, a memory released into the gentle current. For some, it was an offering of peace. For others, a way to say what could not be spoken in life. Rioan bowed deeply toward the river. His own lantern waited beside him, its paper sides glowing faintly from within. He did not write a name on it. There were no words to fit what he carried, only a quiet wish for all that drifts and returns. He placed the lantern on the water. The flame swayed once, then steadied, joining the slow, graceful procession down the quiet river. For a moment, Rioan saw his own reflection beside it, wavering, formless, yet at peace. As darkness deepened, the river became a ribbon of light winding through the sleeping city. And in that light, Rioan felt something loosen within him, a sorrow without shape, floating away into the night. Chapter 1: The Sound of Water, the Breath of Light. Morning came softly to the temple. Mist still lingered over the moss garden, and the sound of the river below reached faintly through the open doors. Rioan swept the stone path with slow, deliberate motions. Each stroke of the broom was a breath, each breath a small act of gratitude. The temple Shigetsu-in, the hermitage of the clear moon, had stood for centuries beside the Kamigawa. Its wooden pillars bore the marks of rain and time, yet its presence was light, as though resting gently on the earth. Tourists sometimes passed by, pausing to take photographs of the gate, but few entered. The quiet within its walls seemed to ask not to be disturbed. Rioan preferred it that way. He was not a man of many words, nor of grand sermons. His life was one of rhythm, sweeping the paths, preparing tea, tending the small bell garden, listening to the wind pass through the pines. Each task was a verse in the same endless chant of being. Yet as the day of the Lantern Festival approached each year, something in his heart shifted. The ceremony drew not only villagers but memories, those who came to send off loved ones, and those who came without knowing what they sought. He could feel the quiet weight of their prayers, like pebbles resting beneath clear water. After sweeping, he carried a small kettle of hot water to the veranda overlooking the river. He poured tea into a clay cup, watching the steam rise in curling threads. The river below glimmered faintly in the morning light, already carrying away a few lanterns that had drifted too far the night before. He thought of his teacher, Master Kogetsu, who had passed away 5 years earlier. It was Kogetsu who had taught him that silence was not the absence of sound, but the heart's willingness to listen. When the old master died, Ryoan had found himself listening more than ever to the water, to the wind, to the spaces between footsteps. Now, as he sipped his tea, he heard something faint, the sound of a small bell carried by the wind. It came from the temple gate. A visitor. Ryoan rose and walked down the corridor, his sandals soft against the wood. At the entrance stood a young woman, holding a small wooden box wrapped in white cloth. Her eyes were red from crying, yet her expression was calm, almost reverent. "Are you the monk of Sigetsuen?" she asked. Ryoan bowed slightly. "Yes. Please, come inside." She hesitated before stepping in, removing her shoes carefully. The box in her hands trembled faintly. "My father passed away last month," she said. "He used to bring me here when I was a child. I want to send his lantern tonight, but I don't know what to write." Ryoan nodded gently. "Sometimes, silence is enough. The river will understand." The woman's eyes softened, and she held the box closer. He guided her to the garden, where the sound of the river filled the air. They sat beneath a maple tree, the leaves trembling slightly in the breeze. "Each lantern," Ryoan said, "is like a breath given back to the world. You don't need words, just intention." She looked toward the river. "Will he see it?" Ryoan smiled faintly. "Perhaps. But more importantly, you will." For a while, they sat in quiet. The woman closed her eyes, her breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the water below. When she opened them again, her tears had stopped. Ryoan stood and bowed. "Come to the river this evening. The light will show you the way." She thanked him and left, her footsteps fading down the mossy path. He watched her go, feeling the air still vibrating with her presence. Then he turned toward the river again, listening to the same eternal flow. The day passed in slow motion, the way time always moved in temples, measured not by clocks but by light. When the evening came, the river would glow once more. And somewhere within that flow, the heart of another soul would be set free. Chapter 2: The Old Bridge and the Whisper of Memory. The river flowed softly beneath the ancient bridge. Its wooden planks, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, carried the faint scent of rain and time. Ryoan crossed it often, yet each time it felt different, as if the bridge remembered every soul that had ever walked across. This morning, mist still clung to the air. Sunlight filtered through it in threads of silver, catching the ripples below. Somewhere, a heron called a long, slow note that echoed through the valley like a question left unanswered. Rioan stopped halfway and leaned on the railing. The water beneath shimmered faintly, mirroring the pale sky above. He could see drifting petals, white, delicate, aimless. Perhaps from a nearby cherry tree still clinging to its final blossoms. He closed his eyes. The sound of the river merged with the distant ringing of the temple bell, forming a harmony so gentle it almost ceased to exist. In that stillness, memory stirred soft, unbidden. He saw himself as a young novice, walking this same bridge with his teacher, Kogetsu. The old monk's voice came back to him, calm and deep as water. To walk across the bridge is to pass between worlds, the world that flows, and the one that remains. But both are reflections of the same silence. Rioan had not understood it then. He only remembered the way the river had glowed in the setting sun, and the old master's slow smile as he watched the lanterns drifting downstream. A light breeze passed, carrying the scent of camellia and cedar. Rioan opened his eyes and found a folded paper tucked beneath the railing. It was old, edges curled, the ink faint but legible. Someone had written a verse upon it. Beneath the bridge, water remembers each step, even those who've gone. He held the paper gently. Perhaps it was left by a pilgrim, perhaps by the woman who had visited the temple the day before. He didn't know, but as he read the words again, he felt a deep stillness within him, a recognition that everything passing left a trace, even if unseen. He placed the paper back where he had found it, letting the wind turn it slightly. Then, bowing to the river, he whispered, "May the flow carry all things kindly." As he walked back toward the temple, the sun broke fully through the mist. The bridge gleamed briefly in its light, and the ripples below seemed to shimmer with quiet laughter. And though he heard no voice, Rioan felt as though the river had whispered back, "You, too, are part of the flow." Chapter 3: A Candle in the Windless Night. Night returned with a stillness so deep that even the air seemed to hesitate. The city's distant lights shimmered faintly beyond the hills, but here by the river, darkness moved gently, soft, unhurried, complete. The Lantern Festival had begun. Families gathered along the river bank, their murmurs blending with the quiet song of the current. Each person held a lantern, some painted with names, others with prayers, or small drawings of mountains and stars. The flames inside flickered like sleeping hearts. Rioan walked slowly among them, his hands folded in his sleeves. The scent of incense drifted through the air, mingling with that of damp wood and night flowers. He could feel the collective hush that fell as the first lanterns were placed into the water. The river received them gently, as though cradling them in its arms. The young woman from before stood at the edge of the water, her hair moving slightly in the evening breeze. She held her lantern close, its light brushing softly against her face. When she looked up and saw Rioan, she bowed her head. "Thank you," she whispered. "I think I finally know what to write." He nodded. "Would you like me to wait?" She smiled faintly. "No, some things must drift alone." And with that, she knelt by the water and placed her lantern upon it. For a moment, the flame trembled, then steadied. It joined the others, moving slowly toward the heart of the current. Rioan watched as the river filled with light, hundreds of tiny flames swaying together, each one a small prayer set free. The reflection of the lanterns turned the surface into a living sky. Above and below, stars shimmered alike. He walked a little downstream, away from the crowd, to where the river widened and grew quiet again. There, he lit his own lantern, a simple one, made of pale paper, no words written on it. Only a single candle, its light steady and calm. He placed it upon the water and whispered, "To all who drift, may your journey be gentle, and your return unseen." The lantern floated away, its glow softening as it joined the slow current. For a moment, Rioan felt as though he were standing outside of time, the river moving, the world breathing, yet nothing changing. A wind rose suddenly, then stilled. Not a single flame went out. The night remained windless, perfectly still. Even the stars seemed to pause, listening. Rioan closed his eyes. The sound of the river grew distant, replaced by the rhythm of his own heartbeat. He could no longer tell where he ended and the current began. There was only flow, soft, endless, illuminated. Chapter 4. Beneath the flowing sky. The river was silver that night. The lanterns had drifted far downstream, their lights now only faint stars trembling upon the surface. The crowd had gone, the laughter and whispers fading into memory. Only Rioan remained, standing beneath the arch of an ancient willow, its long branches brushing against the slow-moving water. He looked upward. The sky itself seemed to flow, thin clouds drifting like silk veils across the face of the moon. The reflection of that sky lay beneath his feet, moving as gently as his own breath. For a moment, he could not tell which was real, the heavens above, or the river below. He sat upon a flat stone near the water's edge. The scent of night jasmine lingered in the air, faint and sweet. From the forest beyond the embankment came the soft rustle of unseen creatures, the quiet language of the night. Rioan dipped his hand into the river. The water was cool, alive. He could feel the slow pull of the current sliding between his fingers, a quiet reminder that nothing in this world could be held forever. A lantern drifted near one that must have broken from the main current. Its paper sides were damp, its flame small but unyielding. He caught it gently, steadying it with both hands. The light reflected on his face, soft as moonlight through mist. Inside the lantern, the flame flickered once, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw a face within it, not of fire, but of memory. A smile, faint and knowing. A gaze that felt both near and endless. "Kogetsu," he whispered. The air grew still. The surface of the river smoothed into a mirror, and in its reflection, another figure stood beside him, robed in gray, serene, familiar. It was his teacher. The figure's voice was no louder than the wind among reeds. "Why do you remain by the shore, Rioan? The lanterns have gone. The river has not stopped." Rioan bowed his head, trembling slightly. "I am still learning how to let go," he said softly. "I fear that when I do, I will lose everything." The reflection smiled a calm, ageless smile. "You lose nothing by releasing it. The river carries what you think is gone, but it returns in ways the eye cannot see." For a long while, Rioan said nothing. Only the river spoke, and its voice was peace itself. When he looked again, the reflection had faded. The lantern in his hands burned brighter for an instant, then went out, leaving only a wisp of smoke curling upward into the starlit sky. Rioan bowed toward the water, his eyes filled with quiet gratitude. He whispered, "Even without flame, the river remembers light. It carries us all." The wind moved again, and the river answered with its endless song. Chapter 5: The Visitor from the Shore. The next morning arrived softly, veiled in mist. The temple was silent except for the slow toll of the bell and the faint call of a dove from the cypress tree. Rioan awoke before dawn, as he always did, but today his body felt lighter, as if some invisible burden had drifted away with the lanterns. He stepped outside into the cool air. The ground was damp with dew, and faint traces of smoke from last night's candles lingered in the breeze. Down by the river, he saw footprints, bare, delicate, leading toward the water's edge. Someone had come before him. He followed the path and found a single lantern resting on the bank. It had not been set adrift. Its flame was out, but the paper was dry, untouched by the current. A red maple leaf lay atop it, its color deep as the heart of autumn. As he bent to pick it up, he heard footsteps behind him. A soft voice followed. "You left this, didn't you?" He turned. The woman from the night before stood a few paces away, her hair gathered loosely, the morning light catching in her eyes. She smiled gently, though there was sadness beneath it. "I came back to thank you," she said. "The river last night, it was like seeing a dream my heart had forgotten." Rioan nodded. Dreams and rivers are much the same. Both take what we offer and return it transformed. She stepped closer, looking at the lantern in his hands. "I didn't send this one," she whispered. "It belonged to someone who used to come here every year. An old man who said he was waiting for a friend." Rioan's breath caught. An image rose in his mind, an old monk, robes faded with time, standing by the riverbank with a lantern held to his chest. "Kogetsu." He placed the lantern gently into the water. The current accepted it without sound, carrying it downstream where the light of morning began to gather. The woman watched silently, her hands folded before her in quiet reverence. When the lantern disappeared around a bend in the river, Rioan turned to her and said, "Sometimes, even after one has gone, they visit again, not to stay, but to remind us that the current still flows." She nodded, tears glinting in the soft light. Then she bowed deeply. "Thank you for everything. I think I can finally let him go." Rioan smiled, the same gentle smile his teacher once wore. "The river knows the way," he said. "Just trust the flow." As she left, her figure fading into the white veil of morning mist, Rioan remained by the river's edge, listening to the murmur of the current. Somewhere beneath its surface, he felt the echo of his teacher's voice, a soft hum, like a lantern's flame still glowing beneath the water. What flows is never lost. What remains is never still. The sun rose slowly above the hills, and the river turned to gold. Chapter 6, Where the River Meets the Dawn. Before dawn, the world seemed to hold its breath. The sky was a pale blue-gray, the river beneath it still and smooth as glass. Mist drifted in low ribbons across the surface, and the distant hills were only faint silhouettes, half remembered from dreams. Rioan stood by the river once more, his robe drawn close around him against the cool air. The night's silence was unbroken, except for the soft murmuring of water against stone. The lanterns from the festival had long since vanished downstream, but their memory lingered in the faint scent of wax and the trace of light on the current. He watched the horizon slowly brighten, a thin thread of gold spreading through the mist. The world was beginning to breathe again. For a long time, he did not move. There was no need to. Everything around him, the river, the sky, the air itself, was enough. It was as though the entire universe had entered a single, unbroken exhale. As the first rays of sunlight touched the water, something caught his eye. A small lantern, tattered, its paper nearly transparent, drifted gently toward him. It must have escaped the flow the night before, hiding among the reeds until morning. He stepped into the shallow edge of the river, the cold water lapping softly against his ankles. He reached out and steadied the lantern in his hands. Inside it, the candle was long extinguished, but within the paper walls there was still a faint, lingering warmth, a whisper of the flame that once lived there. Holding it close, Rioan smiled. He thought of the young woman's words, of the old bridge, of his teacher's voice echoing through the mist. All of them, like this lantern, had drifted into and through his life without truly leaving. He knelt by the water and placed the lantern back onto the surface. It began to move again, slowly, obediently, as if remembering the way home. The sunlight reached it then, and though the candle was gone, the paper caught the light, glowing softly, as if alive once more. In that quiet moment, Rioan understood. Nothing was lost. The river carried everything, the living and the gone, the flame and its smoke, the silence between two breaths. He closed his eyes and whispered a final prayer, not for himself, but for the river that held every story, and for the morning that forgave them all. Light within light, flow within flow, may all find their way home. The breeze stirred gently, and the last of the mist began to lift. The river glimmered gold, and the sound of birds awakening carried through the air, soft as the beginning of a song. Epilogue: one lantern remains. By midday, the temple garden was filled with light. The leaves of the maple trees shimmered green and silver in the wind. The sound of the river below reached faintly through the open gates, a low hum that seemed eternal, unchanging, and kind. Rioan swept the stone path slowly, each movement deliberate, unhurried. The world outside the temple stirred with noise, cars, voices, distant bells, but here, everything was measured by breath and sunlight. When he finished sweeping, he poured tea and carried it to the veranda. He sat where the morning shadows met the light, the warmth of the cup seeping gently into his hands. From where he sat, he could see the river glinting between the trees. And there, caught on a bend near the reeds, was a single lantern, its frame caught among the stones. He set his cup aside and walked down the narrow path to the water. The lantern was weathered now, its once white paper the color of sand, its edges soft with time. It no longer floated, but rested quietly in the shallow water, its journey complete. Rioan lifted it carefully and set it upon the stone bank to dry. He did not light it again. There was no need. Its purpose had already been fulfilled, to carry light where it was needed, to drift, to rest. He bowed to it, then to the river. The wind passed softly through the reeds, carrying with it the faint scent of incense from the temple above. He closed his eyes and listened. The water whispered, as it always had, as it always would. In that sound, he heard the echoes of every lantern that had ever touched the current, every wish, every farewell, every breath surrendered to the flow of life. He smiled. One lantern remains, not to be lit again but to remind me that the river still moves. The afternoon light deepened, turning gold, then amber, then soft silver once more. The shadows lengthened across the stones, and the temple bell rang for the evening prayer. Rioan stood, brushed the dust from his robe, and began to walk back toward the gate. The path before him glowed faintly in the fading light, like a river made of earth and sky. Each step was quiet, yet full of presence, each step a lantern in motion. When he reached the gate, he turned once more toward the river and bowed deeply. Then, without a word, he stepped inside, and the sound of the world grew distant. Again, leaving only the murmur of the water, the sigh of wind through the pines, and the endless, gentle rhythm of the quiet river. The garden's silent morning. Prologue. The sound of dew. In the hush before dawn, when the air still trembles between night and morning, the garden breathes. A thin mist lingers above the moss, silver and weightless, like the memory of a dream that refuses to fade. Somewhere among the leaves, a single drop of dew releases itself, a sound so small, so complete, that the world pauses to listen. The drop falls upon a flat stone. It ripples, once, twice, and then the surface stills. Within that circle of water, the pale reflection of the sky begins to appear. The temple bell has not yet spoken. The wind has not yet stirred the bamboo. Even the sparrows are silent. And yet, in this silence, everything is alive, the unseen pulse of the earth beneath the moss, the slow exhale of the garden as it waits for light. Shinin stands beneath the veranda, hands folded in his sleeves, eyes half open to the drifting mist. He does not move. He does not need to. The morning is already awake within him. He listens to the dew, to the stillness, to the quiet that is not empty but infinite. In that soundless space, where nothing has begun and nothing has ended, he feels it, the heartbeat of the garden. The first whisper of light. Chapter 1. The breath of the garden. When the bell finally rings, its sound moves through the air like a ripple through clear water. Each note spreads slowly, touching the stones, the bamboo, the sleeping koi beneath the pond's surface. Shinin bows once toward the sound, then steps into the garden barefoot. The stones beneath his feet are cool with dew, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and cedar. He carries a small broom of twigs. Its soft bristles make no sound as he begins to sweep. Not to clean but to greet. Each motion is deliberate, each breath an offering to the stillness that surrounds him. The world narrows until there is only the circle of moss before him, and within that circle, the reflection of the sky, a faint blue just beginning to bloom. The garden at Zuikoen is not large. A pond shaped like the crescent moon, 3 stepping stones crossing its narrowest edge, a single pine that bends toward the east. Yet within its borders lives an entire universe. He pauses beside the stone basin, cupping a handful of water to rinse his hands. The cold touches his skin and disappears, leaving behind only the sensation of release. In the distance, a temple bell echoes again, fainter now, as if traveling through mist. He smiles faintly. The garden breathes with him in, out, a rhythm as ancient as time. From somewhere unseen, a cicada begins its song, soft, uncertain, like a memory trying to return. Then another joins, and another, until the sound becomes a slow wave rising and falling with the light. Shinin sets down the broom and kneels beside the pond. The koi drift lazily beneath the water's glass surface, their movements graceful, unhurried. He watches the golden scales glimmer in the pale sunlight, each one catching the world for a heartbeat, then releasing it again. He closes his eyes. In the space between 2 breaths, he imagines he can hear the garden thinking not in words, but in the quiet language of leaves and water. A breeze passes, barely enough to stir his robe. The wind touches the chime above the veranda. It rings once, a single, pure tone, and the garden exhales. The morning opens like a flower. The silence unfolds its wings. And Shinin whispers, not to the world, but to himself. This is enough. The breath, the moss, the sound of dew, all are prayers without words. He bows his head, and the garden, in its infinite patience, bows back. Chapter 2: The Stone Basin and the Sky. The morning deepens, but the light remains soft, a pale gold that drifts through the leaves like slow-moving smoke. Shinin kneels beside the old stone basin. Its surface, worn smooth by centuries of hands, holds a small pool of rainwater from the night before. Within it, the sky is captured whole, a flawless blue bowl resting inside the stone. He leans closer. His own reflection ripples gently as a leaf falls from above. The water accepts it without protest, then returns to stillness, as though nothing has changed. He has always loved this basin. It teaches without voice. When the wind stirs, it shows movement. When all is calm, it mirrors the heavens. He remembers the words of his late master, spoken many summers ago beneath this very pine. When you see the sky in the water, remember it is not the sky that bends. It is the mind that becomes clear enough to hold it. He smiles softly. How many mornings has he come here? How many times has the sky been different, and yet the water remained the same? The cicadas have grown louder now, their song steady and endless. The sound does not disturb him, it folds into the silence like threads in silk. A drop of water slides down the side of the basin. It traces a thin line along the moss, glittering like mercury in the sun. Shinin cups his hands once more and lets the cold water fall through his fingers. It feels like time itself, impossible to hold, yet always present. From the veranda, a bell chimes again. He looks up, and for an instant the light catches the rim of the basin, turning it to pure silver. He whispers, almost to the water itself. To see clearly is to let the water move. The wind answers with a sigh through the bamboo. The garden breathes again, and in its rhythm, he feels the pulse of the sky itself. Chapter 3: The Visitor in White. It was near midday when she came. The gate had been left slightly open, a pale sliver of the world beyond the temple. Through it stepped a woman dressed in white linen, her movements slow, as though she were afraid to wake the stones. Shinin was arranging flowers in a shallow vase by the pond. He sensed her presence before he saw her, a shift in the air, a different cadence in the silence. When he looked up, she stood at the edge of the veranda, hands folded politely before her. Her hair was dark, but streaked with silver at the temples, and her eyes carried a stillness that matched the garden. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You haven't," Shinin replied, bowing slightly. "The garden welcomes anyone who enters with quiet steps." She smiled faintly. Her voice, when she spoke again, was like rain on paper. "I used to come here," she said. "When I was young. There was a monk who taught me how to listen to silence." Shinin tilted his head. The air between them seemed to shimmer, as if the garden itself were listening. He asked gently, what was his name? She hesitated. Then, with a small smile, she said, "I don't remember. But I remember his voice. It was like wind over water." The words touched something deep within Shinin. For a moment, the sound of cicadas vanished, and he could almost hear it again, that low, patient voice. speaking in rhythm with the rustle of leaves. He poured her tea. The scent of roasted barley rose like incense between them. They sat in silence for a while, watching the koi glide beneath the pond's surface. At last she spoke. "Do you believe," she asked, "that the garden remembers?" Shinin looked out at the moss-covered stones, the pine bending toward the east, the basin that still held a piece of the sky. "Yes," he said, "but not in the way people do. It remembers by becoming. Each leaf that falls, each droplet that shines, all are memory, and none remain." She closed her eyes. "I see," she whispered. "Then perhaps I came to remember how to forget." The words lingered between them, soft as drifting petals. The wind passed through the bamboo once more, and the sound filled the air like a slow exhale. When Shinin looked up again, the woman was standing by the gate, her figure almost fading into the white light beyond. She turned once, bowed to the garden, and was gone. He sat for a long time, listening to the sound of the wind chime trembling in her absence. Its tone was faint, but within it he could still hear her question and perhaps her answer. "To forget," he murmured, "is to return to silence." The garden seemed to nod. A single white petal floated down from the magnolia tree, landed upon the water, and drifted slowly toward the stone basin where the sky still waited. Chapter 4: Moss and Memory. The garden had changed since morning. Shadows had shifted, leaving soft streaks of green upon the stones. Sunlight touched the moss in fragments, illuminating each tiny leaf, each delicate sprout, as if the earth itself exhaled in small, invisible breaths. Shinin walked slowly, barefoot upon the damp stones. His fingers brushed the moss, tracing the contours of time etched into each patch. Some areas were thick and velvety, others thin and fragile, yet all were alive in quiet communion. He remembered a summer long ago, a master kneeling beside him, showing how to feel the life beneath the moss. "Every growth has a history," the voice had whispered. "Every living thing carries memory." Now, decades later, he could feel it, the stories beneath his hands, the footsteps of novices. The wind that passed through the bamboo, the rain that fell in soft pulses upon the stones. All layered, overlapping, yet each one still distinct, still singing softly in the present. A dragonfly skimmed the surface of the pond. Its wings caught the light for a heartbeat, then vanished as quietly as they appeared. Shinin watched, thinking, how often do we pass through the world without noticing the fleeting memories it leaves behind? He knelt beside a stone and let the sunlight warm his palms. He listened to the garden speak, not in words, but in the soft, continuous rhythm of life. It was patience, it was remembrance, it was a quiet offering of itself. For a long moment, he closed his eyes and allowed the moss, the stones, the garden's breath, to fill him. He became one with the pulse beneath his hands, the ancient heartbeat of the place, the invisible stories waiting to be remembered. Chapter 5: The Wind Among the Bamboo. By late afternoon, the bamboo grove whispered in a gentle wind. The leaves swayed, creating a shifting mosaic of light and shadow upon the path. The air was cool, scented faintly with cedar and rain from hours before. Shinin moved slowly among the stalks, letting the wind guide him, letting it speak where words were too heavy. A memory drifted through him, a child laughing in the garden, chasing petals that floated down like tiny boats. Another, a soft song of a bird that no longer sang here, its melody held only in the spaces between the bamboo. He paused. The wind carried more than sound. It carried echoes of those who had walked here long ago, their footsteps and breath blending with the present. He felt them pass, not as ghosts, but as memories that the garden had preserved. He placed his hand on a bamboo stalk. It trembled beneath his touch, vibrating with the energy of the grove. He closed his eyes and allowed himself to listen fully, to become part of the rhythm, to flow with the subtle pulse of life that moved unseen. The wind shifted again, gently brushing against his robe and lifting loose strands of hair. The bamboo sighed with 1,000 tiny voices, and in that sigh, Shinin felt the connection between the fleeting and the eternal, each leaf, each breath, each whispered memory drifting, returning, folding into the silence. He exhaled slowly, letting go of thoughts and desires, allowing the wind to carry them away. The grove accepted them with ease. The garden's breath, steady and infinite, embraced him. For the first time that day, he smiled without thought. The wind among the bamboo was no longer a sound outside him, but the sound of the garden within. And as the sun moved lower, its light spilling gold between the stalks, Shinin walked on, silent, unhurried, one with the rhythm of leaves and wind, one with the heartbeat of moss and memory. Chapter 6: A Cup of Morning Light. Dawn arrives slowly at Zuikoen. The mist that clung to the moss begins to rise, revealing the garden in soft hues of gold and green. The pond reflects the sky in delicate ripples, as if the morning itself is breathing through the water. Shinin sits on the veranda, a small cup of tea cradled in his hands. The steam rises in thin spirals, curling like gentle prayers into the quiet air. He inhales. The scent of roasted barley, of wet earth, of cedar all blend into a single, serene note. The garden waits. It waits for no one. Yet in its patience, it offers everything. Each leaf, each stone, each drop of dew is a lesson in stillness. He lifts the cup and drinks slowly, letting the warmth flow through him. The sunlight falls upon the moss, making it glow as though it were stitched with gold. A dragonfly skims the pond, its wings reflecting the light for a fleeting heartbeat. Shinim watches it vanish into the bamboo and smiles softly. This morning, he feels the presence of all who have ever walked the garden. The memories of novices, of visitors, of those who sat in silence beside the pond all flow through him like the river of light across the stones. He realizes that the garden does not hold them captive. It sets them free. A soft wind rises, stirring the bamboo and the pines. Shinim breathes in, and with the exhale, he lets go of everything he does not need to carry. The garden receives it without question, folding each thought, each worry, into its endless patience. He takes another sip of tea. The warmth spreads slowly, as if the sun itself is flowing through him. Every stone, every leaf, every breath of air becomes a part of him, and he a part of them. The morning stretches, quiet, unbroken, luminous. And in that light, he feels the simple truth: to be fully present, to breathe with the world, is enough. Epilogue. When silence blooms. By mid-morning, the garden glows with life. The pond mirrors the sky, the moss is radiant, and the bamboo sways gently in a wind that carries nothing but stillness. Shinim stands, placing his empty cup upon the veranda. He looks out over the garden, not as one who owns it, but as one who belongs to it. Every leaf, every stone, every shadow, every whisper of wind, all are teachers, all are companions, all are prayers. A single white petal drifts down from the magnolia, landing on the water with a faint, melodic plop. It floats briefly, then settles upon the surface, its journey complete. Shinim bows deeply toward the garden. "Thank you," he whispers, "for your patience, your lessons, your quiet. For showing me the way to breathe with all that is." The wind stirs once more, the pond ripples, and somewhere, a cicada begins its gentle song. The garden exhales, and in that exhale, the world seems to fold in upon itself, soft, luminous, infinite. He walks along the stone path, leaving footprints damp with dew, each one a mark of presence, a trace of attention. And as he disappears into the veranda, the garden remains silent, luminous, alive. One petal still floats upon the pond. One leaf still trembles in the bamboo. One breath still echoes in the moss. And in the quiet, silence blooms. Petals falling through evening light. Prologue: the whisper of falling petals. Evening arrives softly at Okayan, like a sigh drifting over the stones and moss. The sky is a pale brush of gold fading into lavender, and the garden holds its breath. Petals fall gently from the cherry trees, spinning in slow circles, as if they have all the time in the world. Some land on the stone path, others drift into the pond, catching the last glimmers of sunlight and letting them go. Kagan stands beneath the veranda, hands folded in his sleeves, eyes half closed. He listens not to the wind, not to the birds or the distant bells, but to the subtle whisper of petals as they touch earth and water. In the quiet, he feels the heartbeat of the garden, the slow rhythm of fading light, the gentle pulse of time passing like a soft wave. And for a moment, he is not a monk, not a keeper of stones and trees, but part of the petals themselves falling, turning, accepting the light and shadow equally. Chapter 1: Shadows along the stone path. The stone path winds through the garden like a river of memory. Each step Kagan takes makes no sound, yet the stones remember every footfall of centuries past. The lanterns along the path are unlit, but their shapes hold the shadows of the day, long and fluid, bending with the fading light. Even the moss seems to lean toward the evening, gathering the warmth and letting it seep into the stones. Kagan moves slowly, deliberately, his robe brushing the edges of the path, hands lightly touching the rough texture of stone and wood. He pauses beneath an old pine. Its trunk is gnarled, its branches heavy with history. Petals have gathered in its roots, like soft fragments of past seasons resting before nightfall. He kneels for a moment, letting his gaze follow the gentle curve of the path. Shadows stretch and twist in subtle patterns, reflecting not just the shapes of trees and lanterns, but the hidden corners of memory, the quiet spaces of thought, the unspoken words carried in the air. A breeze rises, brushing the tops of the maples. The petals stir, rising and falling in the shifting light. Kagan breathes in deeply. The scent of earth, flowers, and distant incense fills him. All that falls, all that drifts, all that is left behind is part of the garden's song, he whispers. He rises, stepping forward, and the path carries him deeper into the evening, where light and shadow mingle, where petals fall endlessly, and where silence itself seems to bend with the turn of each stone. Chapter 2: Lanterns among the maples. The maples glow in the fading light, their leaves a delicate fire suspended between day and night. Lanterns stand silently along the winding path, their unlit frames holding shadows like soft secrets. Kagan walks among them, his hands lightly brushing the carved wood, feeling the coolness that the evening brings. He pauses beneath a crimson branch. Petals have begun to gather at the base of the lanterns, a quiet offering to the approaching dusk. He listens to the gentle shift of air, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant toll of a temple bell. Each sound folds into the garden, becoming part of the light, becoming part of the space between stones. A soft breeze lifts a lantern's paper flap. It flutters once, twice, like the eyelid of the world blinking in twilight. Kagan bows his head slightly, acknowledging the quiet message of the Windevan in stillness, there is movement. He walks onward, letting the lanterns guide him, their silent presence, marking the path as shadows stretch and fold, catching the last glimmers of sunlight and turning them into a slow, golden tide. Chapter 3: The Visitor at Twilight. As the last light brushes the tops of the pines, a figure appears at the gate. She is young, draped in pale linen, moving slowly as if not to disturb the garden. Her hair catches the glow of the evening sun, turning to strands of gold and shadow. Kagan notices her before she reaches the path, a shift in the air, a subtle presence that does not startle, but flows with the rhythm of the garden itself. She stops beside a lantern, her hands folded gently. She looks at the maples, then at the pond where petals drift like tiny boats. "I used to come here," she says softly, "long ago, when the world felt different." Her voice is a thread of sound, folding into the rustle of leaves and the distant echo of water. Kagan bows slightly. "The garden remembers," he replies. "Not as people do, but in the way light touches the stones, and the wind carries the leaves." She smiles faintly, a quiet acknowledgement of something unspoken. She steps closer, and for a moment, the world seems to pause. The pond stills, the leaves hover in the air, the lanterns hold the shadows in perfect balance. "Do you think," she whispers, "that memories can drift like petals?" He watches her, the evening folding around them like soft cloth. "Yes," he says slowly, "they fall, they gather, they restand, yet they are never lost." A petal drifts down from the maples, landing on her sleeve. She touches it lightly, then bows to the garden. Without another word, she turns and walks away, her figure blending into the shadows of twilight. Kagan stands alone, the lanterns around him quiet and still, yet somehow brighter, as if holding the echo of her presence in the soft glow of memory. Chapter 4: Reflections in the Water Mirror. The pond lies still, a polished mirror holding the sky and the maple branches above. Petals float upon its surface, tiny boats carried by unseen currents, turning slowly in the fading light. Kagan kneels beside the water, letting his reflection blend with the sky. He sees not only himself, but the layers of the garden, the moss, the stones, the lanterns, and the drifting petals of countless evenings past. A breeze whispers across the water, disturbing the reflections only slightly, as though time itself is reluctant to move. Each ripple carries a memory, a visitor who once paused at the stone basin, a leaf that fell long ago, a sound of laughter now folded into shadow. He breathes slowly, matching the rhythm of the pond. In each exhale, he releases the tension of the day, and in each inhale, he draws in the quiet wisdom of the garden. A petal drifts close to the edge. He reaches out gently, letting it rest upon his palm. It feels almost weightless, yet filled with the entirety of the evening, the warmth of the sun, the cool of the water, the infinite patience of silence. Kagan closes his eyes. In that reflected world, he is everywhere and nowhere, a breath among petals, a shadow among light, an observer of the slow unfolding of all things. Chapter 5: The Bamboo Grove's Evening Song. Beyond the pond, the bamboo grove hums with life. The stalks sway gently in the evening breeze, their leaves whispering a song too soft for words. Kagan walks among them, bare feet brushing the earth, hands occasionally touching the smooth stalks. The light wanes, filtering through the bamboo in fine threads of gold and green. Petals drift from a nearby maple, settling on stones and leaves, carrying the last warmth of the day. He pauses in the center of the grove, closing his eyes. The wind rises slightly, and the leaves sing with it a gentle chorus, rising and falling, as if the grove itself is breathing in time with him. A memory floats to him on the breeze, a quiet conversation beside the pond, the laughter of a child chasing petals, the sound of a bell long faded. He allows each recollection to pass through, neither clinging nor pushing away, letting the wind carry them softly into shadow. The bamboo sways again. Shadows bend and stretch across the path, light filtering like a liquid through the leaves. Kagan inhales deeply, feeling the song of the grove fill him, every note a vibration in his chest, every pause a reminder of stillness. He exhales slowly. The petals continue to fall. The grove continues to sing. And in that evening chorus, he realizes the garden is alive not only in sight, but in sound, in memory, in breath. He steps forward, letting the bamboo guide him along the winding path, each movement quiet, deliberate, his presence folding gently into the rhythm of wind and leaf, becoming one with the song of the evening. Chapter 6: A Moment Between Dusk and Night. The sky deepens, a soft veil of violet draped across the garden. The last light slips through the maple leaves, casting intricate shadows upon the stones and moss. Kagan stands quietly on the veranda, watching petals drift lazily to the ground. Each movement seems deliberate, each fall a gentle punctuation in the slow poem of the evening. The lanterns along the path remain unlit, yet their shapes hold a subtle warmth, as if they carry the memory of countless sunsets. The wind stirs once more, ruffling leaves and petals in a soft, whispering song. He breathes in, and with each exhale, he lets go of the day's weight. The garden embraces him, folding him into shadow and light, time and silence, as if he were a petal floating to rest. A dragonfly passes over the pond, its wings catching the fading gold. It disappears into the bamboo, leaving only a ripple, the faint echo of motion. In the quiet, he hears the world not in noise but in presence. The pond reflects the evening sky, the stones hold the warmth of sunlight past, and every leaf, every petal, every shadowis. A gentle note in the endless music of dusk. Epilogue when the petals rest. Night settles over Okayan. The maples are dark silhouettes against the deepening sky. The pond mirrors the stars as they begin to appear, and the petals lie still upon the water and moss. Kagan walks slowly along the stone path, bare feet touching the cool, damp surface. He pauses at each lantern, bowing gently, acknowledging the day, the garden, the unseen passage of time. A final petal drifts from the maple, landing on the pond's surface with a delicate plop. It floats for a heartbeat, then rests completely, its journey fulfilled. He kneels beside the pond, placing a hand lightly on the water's edge. "Thank you," he whispers, "for your patience, your beauty, your endless presence. For showing me how to move with light and shadow, with petals and silence." The bamboo sways gently. The pond shimmers faintly in starlight. A soft breeze carries the memory of the evening, folding the garden into the calm of the night. Kagan rises and turns toward the veranda, the stone path illuminated only by the lingering glow of dusk. He walks slowly, each step a meditation, each breath a reflection of the garden's rhythm. And in the stillness, the petals rest. The wind holds its breath. The garden sleeps, luminous and whole, and in its quiet, everything finds its place. The moon watches over the bamboo. Prologue: the silent temple. The night in Kyoto was gentle, like a sigh drifting through the narrow streets. Lanterns hung along the stone-paved alleys, their faint glow reflected in the quiet canals that wound through the city like silver ribbons. The distant sound of a temple bell tolled slowly, carrying through the crisp evening air, marking the passage of time without urgency. The world seemed to breathe in unison with the soft rustling of leaves, the whisper of wind, and the subtle trickle of water from hidden streams. In the heart of this serene city, hidden behind wooden gates and walls draped with ivy, stood a small temple. Its roof, dark against the moonlit sky, was lined with tiles worn smooth by years of rain and snow. Bamboo groves framed the courtyard, their slender stalks swaying gently, casting elongated shadows across the mossy ground. The scent of damp earth and pine mingled with faint incense smoke, curling upwards like quiet prayers, filling the air with calm. Within the temple, a lone monk knelt on a tatami mat. His robes, soft and simple, seemed to merge with the quiet of the room. He bowed his head, hands folded over one another, feeling the slow rhythm of his breath echo through his chest. Each inhalation drew the cool night air into his lungs, each exhalation released tension, a gentle surrender to the stillness around him. He had spent years learning to listen not just to sounds, but to silences, to the spaces between one thought and the next, to the subtle language of the world that often went unnoticed. Outside, the bamboo groves murmured under the tender touch of the wind. The moon hung low and luminous, its silver light spilling over the garden stones and the quiet pond at the edge of the courtyard. The surface of the water reflected the moon's face perfectly, disturbed only by the occasional ripple of a fish gliding beneath. Shadows danced softly on the walls of the temple, moving in gentle rhythm with the bamboo, with the wind, with the night itself. The monk rose slowly, his movements deliberate yet fluid, as if each motion were a continuation of a breath rather than an action imposed upon the body. He stepped into the courtyard, feeling the cool earth beneath his feet, the faint dew dampening the hem of his robes. Around him, the world was hushed, as though the city itself were holding its breath. Even the crickets paused for a moment, respectful of the stillness, their tiny bodies barely stirring in the grass. He walked along the stone path that led through the bamboo grove, each step measured, grounding him in the present. The tall stalks rose like silent sentinels, their leaves whispering secrets to the moon. The monk closed his eyes for a moment, allowing himself to be enveloped by the rhythm of the grove, the sway of bamboo, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of the city fading into quiet. Here, in this moment, there was nothing to chase, no place to reach, only the gentle embrace of night. Reaching the small wooden bridge over the pond, he paused. The water mirrored the sky so perfectly that it seemed he could step onto the surface and walk among the stars. The moon's reflection shimmered, broken only by the occasional ripple of a koi gliding beneath the surface. He inhaled deeply, the scent of wet moss and night air filling his senses. In that single breath, he felt the weight of the day dissolve, each concern drifting away like leaves carried downstream. Sitting cross-legged on the bridge, he allowed his mind to settle, following the slow, natural rhythm of his breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Thoughts rose and fell like the gentle waves of a calm pond. He acknowledged each one without judgment and let it pass, returning always to the serenity of the present. The sound of bamboo leaves brushing together, the faint call of a night bird, and the whisper of wind through the branches became a symphony of quietness, guiding his mind into deeper stillness. As the night deepened, the temple seemed to fade into the landscape, becoming part of the bamboo grove, the pond, and the moon above. There was no separation between stone and moss, between water and sky, between the monk and the quiet world surrounding him. The moon watched over everything with gentle patience, silver light spilling into the corners of the courtyard, highlighting the simplest of details: a leaf curled upon itself, the rough texture of a wooden post, the delicate ripple of water catching the moon's gaze. He felt a profound sense of belonging, not as a conqueror of the world, not as a master of his own mind, but as a single thread in the vast tapestry of life. Each breath, each heartbeat, each sound of the night was a reminder that he was alive, yet he was not the center, he was a witness. And in witnessing, he found peace. Time passed quietly, measured only by the moon's slow journey across the sky. Shadows lengthened, contracted, and shifted in a silent dance. The monk's eyes eventually closed, surrendering to the embrace of night. The bamboo whispered its lullaby. The moon continued to shine over the temple, over the pond, over the city of Kyoto. And somewhere between the whispering leaves and the gentle lapping of water, the world held its breath, allowing the monk and anyone who might listen to drift softly into the quiet depths of sleep. Chapter 1: Bamboo Whisper. The first light of dawn filtered gently through the slats of the temple's wooden shutters. Soft hues of pale gold and lavender stretched across the courtyard, touching the moss-covered stones and the edges of the bamboo grove with a delicate warmth. The city of Kyoto still slept, its streets silent and its lanterns long extinguished, leaving only the quiet of morning to fill the spaces between shadows. The monk rose from his mat, his movements deliberate yet calm, each one an echo of the stillness that had settled in his chest overnight. He folded his robes with care and stepped onto the smooth stone path leading toward the bamboo grove. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of dew and the earthy fragrance of damp soil. Even at this early hour, the bamboo seemed alive, bending slightly with the lightest touch of the wind. Their leaves brushing together in a soft, almost inaudible murmur. As he walked among the towering stalks, he felt the weight of the city lift from his shoulders. Here, beneath the gentle canopy of green, the world narrowed to a single, continuous present. The crunch of his sandals against the gravel was the only sound that broke the delicate symphony of nature. Occasionally, a bird would call softly from the distant branches, and somewhere far away, a stream whispered over stones, carrying its voice through the grove with gentle persistence. The monk paused at a familiar clearing, where the bamboo opened to reveal a small pond framed by smooth rocks and flowering shrubs. Moonlight had receded, leaving the pond glistening with the first rays of the sun. Tiny ripples formed as a fish surfaced briefly before disappearing beneath the surface. He knelt at the edge, letting the cool breeze play against his face. The water reflected the sky, clear and unbroken, reminding him of the infinite quiet that lay beyond the world of daily worries. He placed his palms lightly on his knees, feeling the pulse of life in his fingers, in his arms, in the gentle rise and fall of his chest. Every breath became a note in a delicate rhythm, each inhale filling him with calm, each exhale releasing the lingering tension of dreams and rest. He imagined the bamboo around him as guardians of this serene moment, swaying gently with the wind, guiding his mind into a state of subtle awareness. Time seemed to slow, the morning stretching in quiet unison with his thoughts. Memories of his childhood in the temple flashed gently lessons from elders. The laughter of other monks echoing through the halls, the smell of incense curling toward the rafters. He allowed these memories to drift past like leaves on a stream, acknowledging them without attachment, letting them flow naturally back into the current of now. A soft breeze passed through the grove, carrying the subtle fragrance of jasmine and pine. The bamboo leaves rustled in response, producing a whisper that seemed almost like a conversation. The monk closed his eyes, listening. It was as though the grove itself spoke to him, not in words, but in feelings soft, patient, and enduring. He could feel the rhythm of the grove matching his own breath, a reminder that he was part of something greater, something eternal and gentle. He continued along the path, his eyes tracing the play of light and shadow across the stalks, the moss, the stones. Every step was purposeful but unhurried, as if the world had permitted him to move as slowly as he wished. At the far end of the grove, a narrow wooden bridge arched over a slender stream. The water shimmered, reflecting the light of the rising sun like liquid gold. He stopped, letting the warmth of the sun touch his face, listening to the soft murmur of the stream below. On the bridge, he sat cross-legged, allowing his mind to settle once more. He focused on the simple sounds around him, the sigh of wind through bamboo, the distant call of a bird, the occasional ripple in the stream. With each sound, his thoughts grew lighter, as though lifted by the air itself. The world beyond the grove, the bustling city, the responsibilities of the temple faded into the background, replaced by a serene awareness of the present moment. As he sat, he began to notice subtle details he might have overlooked before, the way sunlight filtered through the slender bamboo leaves, casting intricate patterns on the ground. The tiny movements of insects across the surface of leaves, the gentle tilt of bamboo stalks leaning toward one another, as if in silent conversation. Each observation brought a quiet joy, a sense of intimate connection with the life surrounding him. Hours seemed to pass like whispers, though the exact measure of time mattered little here. The monk felt a profound sense of belonging, not as one who controlled or commanded, but as one who simply existed alongside the world. The grove, the stream, the sunlight, and the faint rustle of leaves were companions in his meditation. Each breath, each heartbeat, each gentle sound became a reminder of the fragile, enduring beauty of life. Eventually, he rose, moving back along the path with deliberate slowness, as though reluctant to leave the sanctuary of the grove. The city began to stir in the distance, faint noises threading through the morning mist. But the grove remained a pocket of stillness, a place untouched by urgency. He returned to the temple with a serene heart, ready to continue his day, carrying the whispers of the bamboo within him. And so, under the ever-watchful sky, with the wind as his companion and the bamboo as his guide, the monk began another day. His mind calm, his spirit steady, and his soul gently cradled by the quiet rhythms of Kyoto. Chapter 2 Moonlit Meditation. Night descended upon Kyoto like a soft, silken veil. The faint hum of the city faded into the distance, replaced by the gentle rhythm of crickets and the whisper of leaves stirring in the wind. The temple, now bathed in the glow of the moon, seemed to breathe along with the earth itself, its ancient timbers creaking softly, its paper screens glowing faintly like the surface of a quiet lake. The monk stepped out into the courtyard once more, his sandals brushing lightly against the cool stone. The air was rich with the scent of night-blooming flowers, mingling with the faint trace of incense still lingering from the evening prayers. Above, the moon floated high and round, a silver lantern hung in the vastness of the night sky. Its light spilled across the temple roof and the bamboo grove beyond, wrapping everything in a quiet, ethereal glow. He paused at the edge of the veranda, gazing out at the garden. The pond shimmered with the reflection of the moon, the surface so still it seemed like a portal to another world. The bamboo stood tall and silent, their slender shadows rippling gently across the moss. A soft wind moved through the grove, carrying with it a hush that seemed almost sacred. The monk walked to his usual spot near the garden's center, a flat stone beneath the oldest maple tree. He folded his robes beneath him and sat, legs crossed, back straight but relaxed. His hands came together naturally, resting in his lap, thumbs touching lightly. He drew a slow breath, feeling the air enter through his nose, cool and calm, then flow out in a gentle exhale. For a while, there was only breath. Inhale, exhale, the simple rhythm of life. As he settled deeper into stillness, the edges of the world softened. The moonlight grew hazy, the line between his body and the night fading into something seamless. He could feel the cool air brushing his skin, the faint vibration of crickets in the grass. The distant hum of water trickling from the temple's small stone fountain. Each sound was part of the same vast silence, a silence not empty, but full, breathing, alive. In his mind, thoughts drifted in and out like clouds across the moon. He watched them without resistance. A memory of a conversation, a fragment of an old chant, an image of morning light through the temple gate. Each came and went, leaving no trace, dissolving into the calmness of the moment. He began to notice his heartbeat slow, steady, grounding him to the earth. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and rain-soaked soil. He felt the presence of the bamboo grove surrounding him, tall, patient, eternal. Their murmur seemed to echo through his chest, like a voice beyond words, whispering a truth older than language itself. He opened his eyes slowly. The world before him glowed faintly blue under the moon's gaze. The pond shimmered softly, and the surface quivered as a single droplet of water fell from a leaf. Rings of light spread outward, gentle and unhurried, each one reflecting the stillness of his own breath. The monk let out a quiet sigh. He did not seek enlightenment tonight. He did not seek understanding. He sought only to be present, aware, and alive in the vast quiet of this moonlit hour. As time passed, he could no longer tell where his meditation began or ended. The moon moved slowly across the sky, its reflection gliding across the pond like a drifting spirit. Shadows of bamboo swayed across his face, cool and soft, and the air grew colder, sharper, more crystalline. The night deepened, yet it brought no darkness, only layers of silver light and silence. He thought of the people sleeping beyond the temple walls, families resting in their wooden homes. Travelers dreaming beneath distant roofs, lovers whispering good night under the same moon. Though unseen, he felt connected to them, as though their quiet breaths joined his own in a shared rhythm. The whole city, it seemed, was part of one vast meditation, the moon its witness. After some time, minutes or perhaps hours, he opened his eyes once more. The world looked unchanged, yet within him, something had settled. His thoughts were as calm as the pond, his breath steady as the wind through bamboo. He placed his palms together in gratitude for the night, for the stillness, for the chance to simply exist in harmony with all that was. He rose slowly, his joints creaking slightly in the cool air, and turned toward the temple. The wooden beams glowed faintly in the moonlight. The flicker of a single candle shone through the paper screens, casting a golden square of warmth onto the veranda. As he walked back, his feet made no sound. Each step felt as though it dissolved into the ground, leaving no trace. Inside, he poured a cup of warm tea, steam curling upward like a ghost of incense. He sat by the open window, watching the moon hover just above the distant hills. Its reflection wavered in his cup, pale and delicate. He smiled softly, taking a slow sip, the warmth spreading through his chest. The bamboo outside rustled faintly, a sound like breathing, like the whisper of the world itself saying, "Rest." He closed his eyes. The tea cooled. The candle flickered once, then went still. The night continued, eternal and patient, as the monk drifted deeper into the quiet body, breath, and world moving as one, beneath the gentle light of the moon. Chapter 3: Whispering Spirits. The night in Kyoto was deeper now, not darker, but softer. The moon had begun its slow descent toward the western hills, and the temple grounds shimmered under its fading light. Mist drifted through the bamboo grove like pale silk, gathering around the stones and the mossy roots. The air was cool, fragrant with cedar and the faint sweetness of camellia blossoms that had opened during the night. The monk stepped quietly out of the meditation hall, his sandals brushing against the dew-damp path. The temple bell had long since fallen silent, yet in the distance he could still hear its echo, not in sound, but in memory, reverberating softly within him. The world around him seemed to listen too, as though the very air had paused to breathe. He walked toward the grove once more. The bamboo loomed tall and patient, their slender stalks glimmering silver under the moonlight. The wind stirred them gently, producing a sound like the slow turning of pages in an invisible book. It was in that sound that he began to sense something, a presence, not seen but felt. The monk did not fear it. He simply listened. At first, it was only the wind, a long, slow exhale through the leaves. Then, gradually, the rustle began to take shape, forming patterns, rhythms, tones, not quite voices, but something near them. The sound was layered, like many whispers flowing together into one great breath. He closed his eyes, letting the sound fill him. The voices did not speak words. They carried feelings: calm, longing, patience, and compassion. They were like ripples of memory, ancient and kind. The monk felt them brushing gently against his heart, as though the grove itself remembered those who had once walked beneath its shade. He thought of the generations of monks who had lived and died within these temple walls. Men who had prayed here, meditated here, laughed here, and finally became one with the silence they sought. Their lives had faded, but their quiet devotion had never truly vanished. It lingered like the scent of incense long after the smoke had gone. The breeze shifted, carrying with it faint notes of temple bells, though none had been struck. The monk opened his eyes slowly, and for a moment, he thought he saw movement among the bamboo silhouettes, faint and flowing, like threads of moonlight. They moved with the rhythm of the wind, each shape dissolving as soon as it appeared. He did not move. He simply bowed his head in silent greeting. Perhaps they were not spirits at all, he thought, but memories of peace itself, echoes of moments when the heart was still and the mind clear. Yet even if they were spirits, they were not to be feared. They belonged to the same quiet world he inhabited now, a realm where time drifted like mist and every breath was a prayer. The whispering continued, rising and falling like waves against a distant shore. In their murmuring, he heard fragments of old chants, familiar yet wordless syllables of devotion carried through the centuries. He found himself breathing in rhythm with them, the sound of his inhale merging with the sigh of the bamboo. The moon slipped lower, its light now silver blue. The grove shimmered softly, each leaf trembling like the surface of water. The monk felt an overwhelming sense of peace, not as a thought, but as a presence filling every part of him. He was no longer merely observing the grove, he had become part of its breathing, its stillness, its quiet pulse of life. He thought of the people of Kyoto, sleeping behind paper walls and wooden doors. He imagined the invisible web of dreams stretching across the city, threads of longing, joy, memory, and hope, all gently watched over by the same moon. Perhaps, he wondered, these whispers were not only from the past, but from the hearts of those still living, dreaming softly in their sleep. A single leaf drifted down from the bamboo above and landed on his shoulder. He looked at it small, delicate, trembling slightly and smiled. In its shape and stillness, he felt the whole of the world reflected impermanence, beauty, and quiet continuation. He stayed there for a long while, sitting cross-legged on the cool ground, letting the whispers rise and fade, until they became indistinguishable from the sound of his own breath. The longer he listened, the more he felt that the world was alive with unseen kindness, a calm, eternal awareness woven into every stone, every leaf, every breath of air. Eventually, the first pale hints of dawn appeared behind the distant mountains. The mist began to lift, revealing the faint outline of Kyoto's rooftops beyond the grove. The spirits or memories, or wind-borne voices seemed to fade with the mist, retreating gently into silence. The bamboo stood still once more, their whispers now only echoes within his heart. The monk bowed deeply toward the grove. He whispered a simple phrase, not a prayer, but a thank you. Then he turned and walked slowly back to the temple. The light of morning touched the roof tiles, turning them to gold. The world, awake again, greeted him with quiet familiarity. But deep within the bamboo, in the hush between wind and silence, the whispers lingered gentle and eternal, as though the night itself continued to breathe. Chapter 4: Moon and Bamboo. The night had returned, soft and luminous. The sun's warmth had faded from the temple stones, replaced by the cool touch of moonlight that flowed like water over every surface. The bamboo grove, tall and unending, rose around the temple like a living sea, each stalk swaying gently, each leaf trembling with quiet purpose. The monk stood at the edge of the veranda, his silhouette outlined against the silver glow. He had spent the day in silence, tending to the garden, sweeping fallen leaves, and watching the light shift through the seasons of a single afternoon. Now, as the moon rose once more, he felt its light enter him not as brightness, but as stillness. He descended the steps, bare feet brushing the earth. The air was cool, rich with the scent of moss and stone. Every sound seemed distant yet clear, the soft croak of a frog near the pond, the faint flutter of wings as a bird settled for the night, the whisper of bamboo moving in slow rhythm with the wind. He made his way toward the grove. The path curved like a ribbon between the trees, leading him deeper into the soft sea of green and silver. The moon filtered through the leaves, scattering its light in gentle fragments across the ground. He could see his breath in the air, small clouds rising and dissolving, like offerings to the sky. As he walked, he felt his mind grow lighter, as though each step carried him further from thought and closer to something vast and formless. The world no longer felt separate, not the earth beneath him, not the air around him, not even the quiet within him. Everything seemed woven together, each sound and silence a thread in a single, endless tapestry. At the heart of the grove, he stopped. The bamboo rose high above him, its tips reaching for the stars. The moon hovered just beyond, framed by their slender silhouettes. The wind stilled. The entire grove seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. He sat on the ground, legs folded, hands resting upon his knees. He closed his eyes. For a long time, there was only the pulse of his heartbeat, steady, slow, like the sound of a distant drum beneath the earth. Then, gradually, he began to hear other rhythms: the faint creak of bamboo swaying, the murmur of water from a hidden stream, the quiet rustle of night creatures moving unseen. Each sound rose and fell in harmony, each breath of wind matching the rhythm of his own lungs. He opened his eyes. The world glowed softly, as though wrapped in moonlight from within. The bamboo seemed almost translucent, its pale green shimmering under the silver light. Dew gathered on the leaves, forming tiny mirrors that reflected the moon again and again, scattering its light into countless fragments. He realized that the moon did not shine on the bamboo, it shone through it. And in that same way, peace did not come to him, it came through him. He inhaled slowly. The air entered him like light entering a calm pond. He exhaled, and the boundaries between breath and wind disappeared. The monk lifted his gaze toward the moon. Its face was calm and full, ancient yet alive. For a moment, he imagined that it, too, was breathing, rising and falling with the rhythm of the earth. Its light flowed across his face, gentle as a hand resting upon his brow. He whispered, "Everything that is, simply is." The words vanished as soon as they were spoken, but their meaning lingered, a truth so simple it required no thought, no name. The monk felt himself dissolve into the stillness, his body no longer a boundary but a vessel for light and quiet. The grove responded. The bamboo swayed ever so slightly, their motion barely perceptible yet full of grace. Leaves brushed one another, producing a sound like faint laughter, or like rain falling in another world. The pond beyond the grove shimmered, its surface mirroring the moon so perfectly that sky and water became one. In that moment, the monk understood not with his mind, but with his being that he was part of the same current that moved the wind, bent the bamboo, and guided the moon across the night sky. Nothing was separate, everything was flowing, endlessly, without beginning or end. He stayed there for what could have been moments or centuries. Time no longer felt like a line, but a circle expanding, contracting, breathing with him. A gentle breeze rose, carrying with it the scent of plum blossoms from beyond the temple walls. It passed through the grove, through the folds of his robe, through his hair, through his very thoughts, leaving only stillness in its wake. When at last he opened his eyes again, the moon had moved higher, brighter, whiter. The bamboo bowed slightly, as though acknowledging something unspoken. He smiled not from joy, but from quiet understanding. The monk rose slowly. The world around him shimmered not with grandeur, but with grace. Every leaf, every sound, every breath was perfect in its impermanence. He walked back toward the temple, the gravel cool beneath his feet. The wind followed, moving through the grove with a sigh, and the bamboo whispered once more, soft, low, and eternal. At the veranda, he turned for a final glance. The moonlight still touched the grove, tracing each stalk in silver. It looked like a vast sea frozen in mid-wave, endlessly still yet alive. He bowed. Then he stepped inside, closing the shoji screen with a sound so soft it seemed part of the wind itself. Outside, the moon continued to shine, its light falling across the bamboo. A patient guardian watching over the quiet world, over the sleeping city, and over the monk who now rested within its gentle gaze. Chapter 5 Nightfall in Kyoto. The night settled gently over Kyoto like a silken blanket. The air grew still, and the last sounds of the waking world, the distant echo of a closing gate. The faint tread of footsteps on stone faded one by one into silence. From the hills beyond the temple, a thin veil of mist began to drift down, softening the rooftops, wrapping the city in quiet light. The monk stood upon the veranda, gazing out across the sleeping world. The moon hung low above the western mountains, its reflection trembling faintly in the surface of the pond. Lanterns along the temple path flickered in the faint wind, their orange glow steady but delicate, like small hearts still awake in the vastness of the night. He listened. There was the sound of water slow and patient slipping over stones beneath the bamboo grove. There was the sound of leaves brushing softly against one another. And beneath it all, there was something quieter still, the rhythm of breath, the hum of the world resting. He breathed in deeply, and the scent of the earth entered him, damp moss, wood, a trace of incense from the meditation hall. It was the scent of time itself, of countless nights just like this one, folded gently together in layers of stillness. The monk turned and stepped down into the garden. His sandals touched the stones without sound. The moonlight seemed to follow him, resting on his shoulders, sliding across his robe like silk. The bamboo grove waited in silence, its tall stalks shining pale beneath the moon. He entered, walking slowly along the familiar path. Each step seemed softer than the last, as though the ground were made of clouds. The wind stirred briefly, brushing the leaves together, and the sound that came was soft, so soft that it felt like a whisper from another world. He paused. The pond at the center of the grove glimmered faintly. The moon's reflection floated there, wavering with every ripple, as though it were breathing. The monk sat down beside it, folding his robes around him. For a moment, he simply looked at the moon, the water, the stillness between them. Then he closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, the world grew wider. He felt the city's quiet pulse, the steady rhythm of 1,000 lives sleeping peacefully beyond the temple walls. He felt the slow sway of bamboo, the turning of the moon, the silent movement of clouds. Everything was connected by the same breath, the same heartbeat, the same deep calm. He began to recite a simple verse in his mind, one he had learned long ago. Though the words no longer mattered, only the rhythm, gentle and slow, like waves reaching the shore. All things arise and pass away, like the breath of wind through bamboo, like the moonlight upon the pond. The verse faded. His thoughts followed it, dissolving like mist into the air. Only breath remained, only quiet. The bamboo swayed once more, and in their movement, he could almost hear them sigh a soft, endless lullaby carried by the night wind. The sound rose and fell, matching the rhythm of his heart. Each note is softer than the one before. Each breath is slower. Each thought was lighter. The moon moved lower still, touching the tops of the trees with pale gold. The pond darkened, the reflections fading until only the faint shimmer of stars remained upon its surface. The monk's eyes drifted open briefly. The world around him was blurred with moonlight, edges melting into light and air. He smiled faintly, not out of joy or sorrow, but out of peace. He lay down upon the soft moss near the water, folding his hands over his chest. The earth beneath him was cool, steady, alive. He could feel its quiet heartbeat beneath his palms, the same pulse that ran through the bamboo, through the air, through the moonlit sky above. He whispered a final prayer, not to gods or ancestors, but to the silence itself. May all beings rest. May all hearts be still. The wind answered softly. The bamboo bowed. their silhouettes swaying like tall shadows in a dream. The monk's eyes closed. His breathing slowed. The night deepened. And in the quiet that followed, Kyoto itself seemed to sleep. Temples and alleys, rivers and rooftops, all resting beneath the tender gaze of the moon. The bamboo whispered its endless song. The pond shimmered faintly, holding the last reflection of light. And the moon watched over it all, patient, eternal, and kind. Epilogue. Dreams beneath the moon. The night had grown still. The moon drifted high above the city, silver and soft, resting upon a bed of clouds that glowed like quiet lanterns. Kyoto lay beneath it in perfect calm, rooftops bathed in pale light, rivers glimmering faintly, the distant sound of a bell rolling through the air like a gentle wave. Within the temple walls, the monk slept. His breath rose and fell in rhythm with the wind that passed through the open shutters. The paper screens glowed faintly in the moonlight, tracing gentle patterns across the tatami floor. Outside, the bamboo grove swayed slow, patient, alive, their shadows dancing softly across the walls. The moonlight touched his face. It was cool, but kind, as if the sky itself leaned close to bless him. His lips curved slightly, a faint smile forming in the quiet of sleep. In his dreams, he was walking once more through the bamboo grove. The air shimmered with light, neither day nor night. The stalks around him rose impossibly high, their leaves whispering in voices he could almost understand. Each step felt weightless, his feet gliding above the moss as if carried by the wind. The path before him glowed faintly, and at its end, he saw the pond larger now, infinite, a mirror of the heavens. The moon floated upon it, perfect and whole. He approached, and when he looked into the water, he did not see his reflection. He saw the sky, vast and endless, filled with drifting clouds and gentle stars. He leaned closer, and the moon's reflection rippled, breaking softly into 1,000 lights. Each fragment rose into the air, floating upward like fireflies. They circled him slowly, silent and golden, their glow warm upon his skin. He felt no surprise, only peace, as they lifted higher and higher, carrying the moonlight with them into the night. The wind moved through the grove, whispering his name not in sound, but in memory. He closed his eyes, and the world seemed to breathe with him. The air itself felt alive, filled with a quiet joy, as if everything that ever was or ever would be existed together in that single, still moment. Then he heard the faint sound of water, a single droplet falling into the pond. The ripples spread outward, smooth and calm, expanding into infinity. He watched them fade, one by one, until the surface was still again. Above him, the moon shone brighter, larger, filling the sky. Its light became softer, warmer, until it no longer seemed to come from above, but from within, a glow that spread through his chest, through his hands, through every breath he took. He whispered, though no sound left his lips, "I am here." And the world answered in silence, "You are everywhere." He sat by the pond for a long while, or perhaps only a moment. Time had no shape here. There was only stillness, and light, and breath. The bamboo swayed again, and as they did, their leaves shimmered like waves of silver. He realized they were not separate from the wind or the water, or the moon. They were all reflections of the same quiet truth, endlessly changing, endlessly whole. The dream began to fade. The air grew softer, the light dimmer. The bamboo, the pond, the moon all melted into a gentle blur of silver and blue. The wind carried a single final whisper through the grove, "Rest now." The monk's breathing slowed. The moonlight shifted across the tatami floor, a moving river of light. Outside, the crickets sang their steady song, the sound of the earth breathing in its sleep. The temple stood quiet beneath the stars. The city beyond lay still, its rooftops glistening faintly with dew. And above it all, the moon kept watch, patient, luminous, eternal. It shone upon the bamboo grove, upon the temple roof, upon the dreaming monk within. It shone upon every sleeping soul in Kyoto, wrapping them in its pale embrace. And in that endless stillness, somewhere between waking and dreaming, the world exhaled and slept.